Choose Empire and get free or low-cost benefits for the whole family. Pay little to nothing from baby's first checkup to filling your prescriptions, all the way to yearly dental exams. Trust Empire Health Plans for your family. Click or tap the banner to learn more. To learn more about applying for health insurance, including Medicaid, Child Health Plus, Essential Plan, and Qualified Health Plans through New York State of Health, the official health plan marketplace, visit www.nystateofhealth.ny.gov or call 1-855-355-5777.
I'll say this for him, he's consistent.
Well, he's been so consistent all year.
Not the taste, consistency.
Consistently, yes.
Consistency! Thanks, losers.
And we are back. It's 2020. Welcome back to the Fantasy Football Consistency Show. I am your host, Bob Lung of Big Guy Fantasy Sports. Once again, sitting on the other side of the glass, my good friend, all the way from Fort Myers, Florida, Mr. Ron Rigney. Ron, how's it going down south?
Doing great, man. We're getting into that baseball mode here. We don't normally talk about baseball on here, but we got a little surprise for you coming up. We went to Race Fest yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
How was that? Good time?
Oh, it's always a great time, man.
Yeah.
Got some new Rays gear. Met Blake Snell. Got a Blake Snell autographed baseball to put in the man cave. It's always a good time. Always a good time. Everybody's optimistic in Tampa this year. It's going to be a good season, but just it's that time of year. Everybody's reporting to spring training. There's going to be games in a couple weeks. So
yep.
Good stuff. Let's go.
Well, speaking of baseball, you know where I was a couple weeks ago. I was out in Goodyear, Arizona for the Indians fantasy camp. I got to be a Cleveland Indian for a week, and it was a lot of fun. For those you may have heard this before, I was out there 5 years ago and had the most perfect week I think I've ever had in my life. We won the whole thing. Our team won it all. We won the championship. It couldn't have been any more perfect. This time, not so much. Great time still by all. Loved it, but it was just a lot of things didn't go as I planned, or at least as I thought. We had the best team on paper, but guess what? We didn't even make the playoffs. We definitely had a consistency problem, not going to lie, especially our offense. We did not make the playoffs, but interestingly enough, when we played the pros on Friday morning, we get to play one inning against all the pros, and we beat them 3-0, and no other team beat them. Nice. And it's very rare that anybody beats them. I stroked a nice little single up the middle against Eric Plunk.
Yeah.
We actually we put Plunk down for 3 runs on 6 hits, and and then we held them to no hits, or actually 1 hit, and shut them out and won our game, or won our inning 3-0. So that was kind of the highlight of the week. But anyway, it rained one day and got an entire rain out. I know it's hard to believe in Arizona. It was only the second time it happened in 10 years. So just things didn't go as well, but still a fun week. It was great. So, but as Ron says, we have a huge announcement. First of all, everybody, thanks for coming back. Thanks for listening again to the Big Guy Fantasy Sports Fantasy Football Consistency Show. We will be here every week going forward now for, basically the rest of the year. We took a little time off there to kind of refresh and regroup. And what did we do in that time period? Well, glad you asked. Starting this afternoon, you can go to BigGuyFantasySports.com right now. And if you play fantasy football, you play fantasy football, you wouldn't be listening. But if you play fantasy baseball as well, guess what? If you're in a head-to-head league where you've got, weekly competitions and you're playing in a points, or maybe it's cumulative point scenario, you've probably thought, man, you know what? I could use a little consistency in that and know who's consistent week in and week out that I can count on, to help me get through the week and win my games and that kind of stuff. Well, guess what? We're here for you. As of today, you can go to the site right now and find the entire fantasy baseball consistency report, exactly the same like the football, but with baseball stats. All the positions are covered from catcher to relief pitcher. Ron Rigney, of course, is out there doing his thing. He's got the catchers, correct?
First base.
First base, sorry. Yep, you're right. First base. But a lot of great new writers definitely go and check it out if you're in any baseball league, or if you know people who are in fantasy baseball league, especially head-to-head. Obviously, rotisserie doesn't work as well, but head-to-head leagues, come and check out the site. Ron, now I know you've seen it. We've got everything posted today. We're getting Twitter abuzz, which, of course, we're kind of overwhelmed by the Oscars right now, so we'll keep working on getting Twitter abuzz for the baseball stuff. But really excited about this. Wanted to know your thoughts. I know that we're going to be coming on the Nasty Cats and some of the shows so that we can help promote this on those as well that you're a part of. But what are your thoughts right now as we kick off fantasy baseball consistency for the first time?
Well, it's just cool to see it, kind of come to fruition here because, we started talking about this, I think about a month or so ago, and got everybody on board with that, and just, adding all the writers that we've added. I mean, we've got guys that have covered, like you said, we've got everything covered 100%, and it's going to read, the report's going to read just like that fantasy football consistency report that you're used to. We've got the clutch rating. We've got the weeks that they were consistent. We've got the weeks they played. We've got the X consistency. We got it all just like the football. And it's and like when you think about it, it's a concept that makes sense because your football leagues are essentially head-to-head baseball format in a way. So it makes sense that we throw this out there, but it's thorough. We've got at least 20 to 30 guys covered every position, a few more in the outfield, a few more at starting pitcher. But we've covered everything you need as far as being consistent in your leagues this year for sure.
Right. And the consistency report, as Ron said, has that data that you're used to when you're used to the football. So, for example, I'm looking at the first base, which, of course, Ron covered extremely well and got some great analysis in there. But, you look at the top of the list, Pete Alonso, number one, 92% consistent. Cody Bellinger, 83% consistent and first in total points. But sneaking in there at 85%, even though he's only 13th ranked in fantasy points, is Matt Olson, who I know is definitely an up-and-coming first baseman for the Oakland A's. 85% consistency, got a nice X consistency of 22.19. So he's right there, So that's the kind of stuff. Just like you look in football, you're looking for those guys that didn't have the high total points possibly, but have some high consistency, and vice versa. And I don't even know how to pronounce it. I'm sure you know how to pronounce this guy. This plays for Houston. Ulieski, is that how you pronounce it?
Ulieski Gurriel.
Right. So 9th in total points last year, but guess what? Only 58% consistency. So just like I said, Anthony Rizzo, 12th in total points, only 54% consistency. So that's the kind of stuff we're bringing out for you, just like we did for football. We want to help you identify in your leagues that are doing head-to-head. You want to make sure you're identifying the most consistent players as you're drafting and getting some value out of them that nobody else is going to have available to them data-wise and analysis-wise to bring you the best in fantasy baseball, just like we've always brought you the best in fantasy football consistency as well. So, Ron, again, thank you for all your help, and it's going to be a great time looking forward to this. But we've got to talk about football, and tonight is the Oscars. Lots of awards being given away for the movies, but we've got the best awards to give away. And, of course, those are the 2019 Fantasy Football Consistency Awards. Tonight, we're going to hit the quarterback position. For those of you who have followed us for the past few years, you know this is an annual event. We really get into finding, and giving the awards. And sometimes the awards are kind of more a kick in the nuts to these poor players, kind of like our first one, the worst value. This award goes to the quarterback who had the highest ADP at the beginning of the season, basically high. Everybody was after this guy, really thought he would be your man, and you probably drafted him as your starting quarterback, but ended the season with the worst combination of total fantasy points and consistency, thus making him the worst value at quarterback in 2019. Ron, I'm going to throw it out to you. Who is your first nominated quarterback for this award?
My first nominee is going to be a guy that is very, very close to home for you, Bob, and yet again a guy that everybody was on the hype train for not just him but the team. Everything was looking up in Cleveland, and all of a sudden they had to actually go out and play the games, and then that's kind of the biggest part of it is things didn't go too well as far as what we were looking for. And my nominee for this award is going to be obviously Baker Mayfield. And I got sucked into that hype train as well. And I think a lot of people did. And considering like what we said, we saw off of his rookie season, the addition of Odell Beckham, the addition of Kareem Hunt after 8 weeks. You've got Jarvis Landry there. You've got David Njoku there. We were just expecting big things. But when you've got the guy that's the fourth quarterback off the board, the 54th total player coming off the board, underperforming the way that he did, he's got to be up there as far as one of my guys that's going to be nominated for this award. So let's see how it goes.
All right, well, the winner is not Baker Mayfield, but Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, man, what a I don't even know how to say it. It was just a weird year for Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers because guess what? The Green Bay Packers had a very good season, made the playoffs, had a great record, but Aaron Rodgers, like I said, he's definitely had a Hall of Fame career, and maybe someday he'll be coming to the Hall of Fame. I'm sure he will. But, man, the past couple of years has been so inconsistent. Last year he was ranked 7th in total points, only 56% consistent. So you got to think, hey, there's no way he could be worse, right? Right? Well, guess what? He did. Everyone who was expecting a bounce-back season, his preseason ADP was QB3, right behind Mahomes and Deshaun Watson. His overall ADP was early 5th round, pick 49, but his results in 2019 were horrendous. 11th in total points, only 38% consistency, which ranked him 26th. Yes, Mayfield had a bad year, but at least he was 50% consistent. Yeah. It's not great, but, man, what do we do? I mean, I'm certainly not drafting Aaron Rodgers next year, and neither should anybody who's listening to this show, but is it time for him to – is it time for the Packers to draft a quarterback for the future? I mean, they're winning football games, so it's hard to argue from a football NFL standpoint. But from a fantasy standpoint, I'm not even sure I could draft him as a backup anymore.
I mean, I can take him as a backup, but he's somebody that I've not been on for the last few years. I think I maybe have him in one dynasty, but it's just because I've had him, I think, for 3-4 years in that one. But yeah, it's kind of starting to look that way, and I don't really know. I don't get to see him play a whole lot being down here in South Florida, but it's one of those things that I don't know necessarily what the issues are. I mean, but when you look at just now, granted, it was against a great team, a great defense in the 49ers,
right?
But you just look at how they got their doors blown off in the playoffs against the 49ers, and he was right there as one of the issues as far as what happened. So somebody I haven't been on for a couple of years in redrafts, and I don't really feel comfortable drafting him as my QB1, QB2 maybe, but it would depend upon the bye week and the bye week matchup for sure.
Right. No, it's tough. Like you said, he had some good games. That's the thing. If we can identify just those good games, he could maybe be a good DFS. But is a DFS folks ever going to really value him so low that he's really worth picking in a DFS? That's going to be the tough part because it's going to be hard to say, let's put him at $4,000 for a quarterback because it's not going to happen. He's Aaron Rodgers. You can't do it. But all right, so let's move on to the best value. This award goes to the quarterback that had the lowest ADP at the beginning of the season and ended the season with the best combination of total fantasy points and consistency, thus making the best value. And I'm going to go first and nominate Josh Allen. I mean, this guy, certainly was not very high on most ADP lists. He went into the season, he had a decent second half last year for the Bills as a rookie. I saw some value in him. I drafted him and maybe as a backup in some leagues, but I certainly didn't go crazy over the guy. But he really did a nice job this year. Comes in 9th in total points, 69% consistency, which ranked him 9th as well. His X consistency 14.08. So, not too bad. I thought this was a pretty good rebound for him, and definitely gave him a lot of good value. So, Ron, I'm going to give it back to you for your recommendation.
And the thing is, real quick with Josh Allen too, you've got guys, when you look at his ADP, you've got Jimmy Garoppolo and Mitch Trubisky had higher ADPs than Josh Allen.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, it was QB 21. Mm-hmm. I mean, the one I'm looking at, he was QB 21, so he was definitely down there.
Yes, sir. So my nominee is going to be, I think, the obvious choice though. And while Josh Allen is a great selection, we're going to go with basically the number one guy in fantasy football, the number one guy as far as the league MVP, and that's Lamar Jackson. It's kind of an obvious choice here, for him to be the winner. 14th quarterback off the board, pick 106. And, you can't say enough about what he did. And when I look at my own teams, I had 3 teams that I finished really, really well. It's not a coincidence that he was my quarterback in all 3 of those teams, and he was drafted as my backup in all 3 of those teams. So when you can hit on a pick like that, he's got to be a heavy favorite for this award.
And you're right, he is, and because, in fact, he did win. He is the winner. So for the second year in a row, interestingly enough, guess who won this last year? Patrick Mahomes. For the second year in a row, a relatively inexperienced quarterback stepped into the starting role, very little hype, and blew the doors off the fantasy world. I mean, there were some people who were like, I think he has a shot. I think he could do well. But let's be honest, he didn't really show anything the year before. He had flashes. I think his best game was the last game of the year against the Browns when he went off for like 125 yards rushing and put up like 35 fantasy points. But it was week 17 and it was against the Browns. Nobody gave that any thought, even thought process of like, oh yeah, that right there proves that he's great. I don't think anybody. And then I saw some preseason film of him throwing ducks in preseason. I'm like, this kid just doesn't have it. But whatever happened, whatever magic dust, Mr. Harbaugh sprinkled on him to make him into a machine, they did just that. And like I said, he was an ADP of QB 13. All he did was end the year first in total points, 58 points ahead of second place, and a consistency rating of 93%. I'm sure Lamar will win some other awards as we go through the evening, but, where do you see Lamar going next year ADP-wise? Now, I think there is some early ADPs. I think I was just out here the other day on our favorite site, fantasyfootballcalculator.com, and I'll pull it up here. Look at our quarterbacks. So we got Lamar at 212, end of the second round, which is pretty much where Mahomes was going last year. Mahomes, according to the ADP right now, is at 301. Is it worth grabbing either one of these guys at the end of the second round, early third? To me, it's still a little too early. What about you?
Yeah, it's always early for me to pull the trigger on a quarterback there. But, I mean, it's one of those things, if you want to get one of those 2 guys, if you have your draft plan set and your heart set on them, you're going to have to pay that. And you might have to pay even more than that. I look for that to go up a little bit as the season goes up, though. Right.
Because, I mean, again, these are early ADPs, drafts between November 14th. Why would there be a mock draft at November 14th, 2019? But anyway, you've got then Deshaun Watson at 412, Russell Wilson at 505, Aaron Rodgers still 5th quarterback off the board at 512. I just feel like, heck, if Josh Allen's going to be in the 8th round, I'll wait for him and then grab Matt Ryan in the 9th round, and I think I'd be pretty decent with that, Jameis Winston's at 9-11 or 14th quarterback. So I think there's some value in these, quarterbacks you can wait on. Yeah, there's a little bit of consistency issues maybe with each of them somewhat, but, we did the con streaming for quarterbacks last year or this past year, and, was pretty successful with it, using guys like Matt Ryan and Roethlisberger until he got hurt and various others, Russell Wilson. And I think we could do that again this year, and we'll probably be looking at that more in depth as we keep putting together the consistency guide information and documentation. But, I think that it's one of those where I don't know if we could take the chance because that's just so early to take a quarterback. But we'll have to wait and see. Last year Mahomes kind of fell sometimes in some drafts. Remember the Kings Classic? They was going like the 5th round. I got him for like $13 in our auction league. I think you got him. Did you get him in a couple of leagues?
Mahomes, no. I had a pretty healthy dose of Lamar Jackson everywhere, but I don't think I had one league where I had Mahomes this year.
Yeah, I only had him in the one, and that was the Kings Classic auction league because I brought him up first thinking he would go really expensive, and I went to $14, and everybody stopped. And I made the playoffs with that team, so he got me there, but it's definitely didn't put up the numbers he did the year before, which is why I probably didn't get much further. Plus, of course, I ran into that combination of Ryan Fitzpatrick, Devontae Parker, and Kenyon Drake against the other team. So anyway, but I'm not bitter. Just saying.
No, definitely not.
All right, let's move on. Rookie of the year. I'm not even put up a nomination because there wasn't anybody who competed with this guy. Of course, the winner is by far Kyler Murray. he was the number one pick overall in the NFL, handed the starting role, so it makes sense he should be the Rookie of the Year. Doesn't always work that way, hence Baker Mayfield. Kyler Murray, though, didn't disappoint. If you remember from our annual Rookies versus Consistency article, very few quarterbacks in their first season exceed a 60% clutch rate. However, Murray did do that with 63%, ended the year ranked 7th in total points. He's certainly going to be a QB1 next year for somebody's fantasy team. He may be a little bit overhyped, so be careful. But, Ron, right now I'm looking at it, he's 6th round, 606. How comfortable are you with Kyler Murray as your starting quarterback in the 6th round next year?
I think I'm pretty comfortable with it just for the fact I don't think he's going to post what he did, like what Lamar Jackson did, but I think you're definitely going to get some serious value with the legs there. But also I look for them to add some weapons around him. Obviously he's going to have another year under his belt, but that whole experiment went a lot better than what I thought it would. So hats off to him and hats off to Cliff Kingsbury there as well to, be able to put an offense around him and chart plays around him that are going to make him ultra successful. But I'm very comfortable with that in the 6th round. I'd be definitely all right with him as my starter, especially with, if I went wide receiver, running back up until that point. I think that looks pretty good.
I do too. Here's the only thing I'm going to throw out, and this obviously will be well documented in the guide. I might even bust into my Game Pass and watch some of these games. But, he went 2 for 5 over the last 5 games. And the one he did earn, one of the 2 was in Week 17, which you never kind of can bank on being a true game, that everybody's really playing hard unless they're playing for playoff spots. That's the only thing that scares me is that, he was actually right up there in the 70, 80 percentile. And then after his bye from Week 13 on, I don't know if teams figured him out, or is it the fact that Kenny Drake came into town and the running game finally got something moving, and they didn't need to throw the ball. So not sure, but that's the only thing. I'm looking at the clutch games by week, and I see something there that I want to investigate a little bit deeper. Was it the running game was working, so they, because we can remember one of those games against the Browns when Drake had 3 or 4 rushing touchdowns. Mm-hmm. So obviously Kyler Murray didn't have to throw the ball because they were killing him. So that's what I have to look at. I don't have all that in depth in front of me, but that's the only thing that kind of worries me. But I do like Kyler Murray a lot as a 6th round guy. Their defense isn't going to be that great, so they're going to be always playing catch up. But if they got a running game and Kenny Drake is really as good as we think he is, and but let's say they switch back and they decide to go back to David Johnson and everybody's healthy and you've got Chase Edmonds, then it's definitely maybe worth going with Kyler Murray because he certainly was putting up great numbers, high consistency numbers early in the season or before Week 12, before Drake came into town. So we'll have to wait and see. All right, we move on to one of our awards called the Clutch Less. So this award, it goes to the quarterback that ended the season with a high ranking in total fantasy points, but his consistency was lower than expected, therefore making him look more valuable due to high points rank that he may been worth to his fantasy teams. And Ron, I'm going to throw it out to you for the first nomination for the Clutch Less Award.
Well, I'm going to give an honorable mention to our guy, Aaron Rodgers. I don't want to pick on him all night, but he's definitely somebody I'm going to mention here. 11th ranked overall, 26th in consistency. You mentioned that earlier. But I'm going to go with my official nominee being a guy you mentioned just a minute ago, and that's Jameis Winston. 3rd in total points. He did finish 12th in consistency, 63%. But when you're high up around that, we've got our first and second guys right there also in total points and consistency. And then you've got number 3 all the way down there at 12. It's kind of hard to trust. He did put up some impressive point totals, but also the guy threw 30 interceptions as well. So I think he might be our first you think of 30-30 being a baseball term, but you don't want to see your quarterback be a 30-30 guy, but he definitely accomplished that for sure.
Not unless it's 30 touchdowns passing and 30 touchdowns rushing. Then it's a big deal.
That's the kind we like right there.
That's the kind you want to see. That may never happen in our lifetime. Unless you never know. I mean, Lamar could do it. Anybody can do it. Anyway, so good nomination. I definitely would have been high on my list, but the winner is Russell Wilson. It's interesting. He's so hard to predict. So heading into this past year, Russell Wilson had 5 straight years where he started off with 2 clutch games or less out of the first 5 games. So tremendous slow starter. Then would come on and have a great rest of the year and usually end up about 70, 75% and be very solid for you. 2019, he starts off with not only 3 straight clutch games, but goes 5 out of his first 6. And I thought, oh, here we go. Now, I didn't get a lot of Russell Wilson. He was a little bit, I don't know, I guess I was either always picking Deshaun Watson or I was waiting a little bit farther and picking up Mayfield or somebody. So I didn't get a lot of Russell Wilson this year. I think I had him in a couple of leagues. So anyway, so he's, like you said, he would heat up at the end. Well, what happens this year is he goes the opposite direction and only earns 5 more clutch games over his last 11 games, and one of those was in Week 17. So his preseason ADP was QB8. He ends the season ranked 4th in total points, but only has a 56% clutch rating, which ranked him 16th. And this is probably the lowest I've seen his consistency in years. So the question is, can we put him in the top 5 still, which he already is ADP-wise looking into 2020, at least from Fantasy Football Calculator. He's going as the 4th quarterback overall. 505 is the pick. What are your thoughts on Russell Wilson, and will you draft him at that spot in 2020? Can you trust him, or is the Seattle Seahawks team just a different scenario now?
I mean, I'd like to see them add some more weapons. I'd like to see, if Will Dissly can come back and be an important piece of that. I'd love to see them add a receiver or two. I mean, I'm okay with him as my quarterback. I just don't know if I'm okay with it in the 5th round. I think I'd rather wait another round and pick up Kyler Murray myself if I'm going to wait until that scenario. But the other thing is, too, I don't know if you've seen this lately, but Russell Wilson's new haircut might prevent me from drafting him altogether.
Oh, no.
I don't know if you've seen that.
No, I have not.
It's kind of a combination of some 80s Prince, and I don't know if you remember the WWF wrestler Razor Ramon.
No.
But it's kind of okay. It's kind of
so very Jerry curl. Is that what we're going for? Jerry curl, kind of.
A little. It's got a little bit of that flair. I can't explain it. You just got to search it up for yourself. You'll Google it. You'll find it in about 5 seconds, and then you can draw your own conclusions from there.
I mean, we're not talking like he's going like Kurt Warner's wife-esque. He's just kind of going for more of a Jerry curl Prince.
Yeah, it's more like
okay.
I can't even explain it. You just got to see it.
All right, so folks, if you're out there, look for it. I don't want to interrupt the show to look, but I'm sure it's fantastic. So Russell Wilson. Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I'm like I said, after his, he totally flipped what he'd always been doing. It's just like I don't even know if I can trust this guy anymore. I mean, to be honest with you, there's so many. I mean, we said this last year, and I guess we'll just keep saying this every year. Is quarterbacks are so hard to trust, and if they aren't, then you're picking them in round 4 or sooner, which is Lamar Jackson and Mahomes and Watson. Interestingly enough, there is no awards for Dak Prescott. No, I take that back. Never mind. We'll get to him. Let's move on. Let's go to the clutch more here. This is the quarterback that ends the season with a low ranking in total fantasy points, but his consistency was higher than expected, therefore making him look less valuable due to the high points rank. But he was actually worth more, and this is an interesting one. So I'm going to throw out for my nomination. Who am I going to throw out? So I'm going to throw out. Well, I'm going to throw out Matthew Stafford because he was 29th in total points because he missed the last 8 games. But leading up to that, he was 75% consistent through the first 8 games of the year, which actually tied him, with guys like Ryan Tannehill. He's right there with Deshaun Watson, Matt Ryan. So he's my nomination for the Clutch More Award. Ron, I'm going to give it to you and let you take it from there.
Well, you just mentioned my nominee for this, and it's going to be the guy that would win the Left for Dead Award as well, and that's Mr. Ryan Tannehill in Tennessee. I mean, a guy that, got handed the job in Miami, got chances and chances and chances, and then signed on in Tennessee, and lo and behold, beat out Marcus Mariota, which honestly, the way Marcus Mariota has played the last couple seasons, not that hard of a task. Right. But I don't think anybody expected Ryan Tannehill to come out of nowhere. And Ryan Tannehill is one of those guys that if you get him on waivers when he was available, he was probably a league winner for you if you were able to capitalize
right.
on those 12 games if he started. But 22nd in total points with 258 total points, but 75% consistent right there as far as consistency-wise, just above our guy Matthew Stafford there that you just nominated.
Right. And hey, you're right. That is the winner. Tannehill, could have taken the Comeback Player of the Year award, which is the next award we're going to go to here in a second. But I felt he deserved this one a little bit more. Becomes the starter in Week 7, ends the year ranked 22nd in total points. Consistency ranked him 7th in his 75% clutch rating, which left him going 9 for 12. For his 75%, left him tied for third in consistency. Throw into that he ripped off those 9 really in the last 10 games. The first 2 games he was kind of started a little slow, and he had some spots where he filled in. So that's why he played 12 games, but he really only started 10. He started Week 7, in Week 7 and went from that. So those 10 games, he was really 9 for 10. So he was 90% consistent. The reason there's 2 other games in there is because of the fact that he filled in for Mariota, I think, at the end of some games where he may have come out for a series or 2 due to injuries. But when he really started those games, he was 9 for 10. Now, interestingly enough, what happened to him in the playoffs? Derrick Henry runs rampant, and he threw 10 times in one game or something? Didn't he have 10 attempts in one of the games, I think? So,
one of the games I think he had 70. I think it might have been the New England game. He had 76 yards. So.
Yeah, right. So that's my only concern is okay, what happens if Derrick Henry keeps running well? Will we have these games where he could hurt us? So, again, right now, he's still – I'm looking for him in the ADP. Tannehill is at – now, it says he's at quarterback 23, 1306. I hope he stays there. I wouldn't even care if he just happens to be round 10 or 11. He's going to be a great backup. That's going to be a definite value if you can get him as a backup. Talk about streaming. I mean, if we can get guys like Tannehill and Winston and Ryan and Josh Allen, and we can stream these, then we're going to be able to put together some great quarterback numbers. So definitely will be one of our streaming guys. I can almost guarantee it right now as we head into the year. So anyway, all right, so good choice there. Ryan Tannehill, the winner for the Clutch More. All right, so let's move into the Clutch Comeback Player of the Year. This goes to the quarterback that ended 2018 with a poor ranking in points and consistency, but 19 had the greatest improvement in both categories. Like I said, Tannehill was right up there, and I'm just going to kind of move. We're getting a little close on time, and I want to have some more time available. So I think Tannehill would have been the obvious one. I think you agree, Ron, that he would have been the obvious nominee, one of the obvious nominees for Comeback Player of the Year. But the winner was, and it was a close race, was Dak Prescott. And I said, Prescott had such a great year overall. It's hard to not give him this award. He was an afterthought backup in most 12-team leagues. His ADP was QB 16. The year before, he was 47% clutch rate, really hadn't shown any consistency since his rookie season. Based on that alone, his 2019 numbers of being second-place ranking in both total points and consistency of 81% is an amazing comeback. The question is, Ron, for you and me, is can he do it again? Can he keep that consistency up? His OCs should still be there. I don't think he left. Now they lost their head coach, obviously. They're bringing in who they bringing in?
Mike McCarthy.
Mike McCarthy. So good quarterbacks coach as well. Do you see him maintain this? Right now, his ADP, Prescott, is now QB7, obviously a little bit of an improvement, but he's going at the end of the 6th round, probably early 7th. Are you good with taking Dak Prescott as your QB1?
I think so, and kind of like you said with McCarthy coming in, he had some great years in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers, and as the season went on with Dak Prescott, I remember every week we would talk about, okay, when's the week this is going to fall off? When is the week that this is not going to happen? And as you can see, out of the 13 out of 16 for the 81% clutch rating, that really didn't necessarily happen. So I think at round 6, round 7. I think I'd be okay with drafting him as my quarterback, and I think he can keep it up. I think he can keep up with the consistency for sure. Like I said, I'd like to see, just like with Kyler Murray, I'd like to see them maybe add a couple more weapons here and there, but I think he'll be just fine.
Well, of course, the great thing is he plays in the NFC East, which means he gets to go twice against the terrible Giants pass defense, twice against the terrible Redskins defense, and twice against the Philadelphia Eagles terrible pass defense. So those 6 games alone should just give you some reason to draft him. And again, definitely could be one of those guys that we're going to look at from a streaming standpoint for quarterbacks. You get him like you said, 6th, 7th round, and then grab one of these other guys later in your draft. I think it's going to be definitely a good choice. So, all right, so that comes to our last one, the big yeehaw of the entire event, the Movie of the Year award, best movie, best motion picture here. We're giving the best clutch quarterback of the season. And, Ron, I don't think we even have to go into nominees for this. This is a hands down. This is almost as easy as Patrick Mahomes was last year. And that is, of course, Lamar Jackson. His only blemish this year was Week 5 against Pittsburgh, but 93% consistency, 58 points ahead of Dak Prescott at number 2. Jackson actually took Week 17 off for the playoffs, so he did not play, so that's why he was 14 out of 15. So not because he was hurt, not because he did poorly. It was just, they had clinched their spot. His X consistency was also ranked number 1, 28.25. Dak is second at 20.14, almost 8 full points. That's just absurd difference between the two. There were actually only 2 quarterbacks even over 20 points X consistency, and that was those 2. So he is definitely the runaway MVP for quarterback. Your thoughts, and again, kind of going back to what we talked about before, can we trust him for a return to these numbers? Were these numbers they were certainly great numbers. They weren't 50 touchdowns like Mahomes, but from a fantasy standpoint, definitely, one of the highest point totals we've seen in a while. I think Mahomes was 490 the year before, if I'm not mistaken. I'm looking that up, but what are your thoughts on that?
I don't think it would be any shock if you saw a little bit of regression as far as points, because it gives teams a full year of film to look at and a full year, full off season to prepare for, something they didn't really know what they were going to have to prepare for coming into this season. So I see no reason that he couldn't be the number 1 quarterback in total points and consistency next year. But with that 455 point total, like I said, I don't think you should be shocked if you do pay that price for him. You see a little bit of a dip. I don't think the dip is going to be very much, so I think it's going to be minimal. I think he's still going to be a dominant player.
Right. The only thing that always scares me, of course, is any running quarterback is the fact that there's an injury risk. Somebody hits him from the side, takes him out by the knee. I always I remember talking all season, and I'll bring it up again, is, this is, we all remember Robert Griffin's first full year. And I think it was his rookie season. And, everybody thought that this guy was unstoppable. He's unbeatable. He's going to be around forever. He's the man. And within 2 years, he was pretty much, injuries and the hits took their toll. And, now he's nowhere to be seen other than a backup occasionally. So, that's the only thing that scares me. I mean, Mahomes was that way too, but he didn't run as much. But now his knee injury was such a fluke thing. I remember watching that on TV, and I still looked at it and went, it didn't seem like he got hit that hard. But obviously his knee popped, and he was out for a few games, and that was the only thing that really hurt him this year, I think, was that missing those few games, heading down the stretch. But so I think Lamar's, it'd be interesting if they get him some real weapons. Remember, he's doing all of this throwing to guys like Willie Snead, Marquise Brown, who was up and down all year. Mark Andrews, obviously a very talented tight end. They seemed to stay with the short, intermediate passing. Didn't do a lot of long balls downfield, even though Lamar can throw that. What are your thoughts if they go out and get a deep threat, like the John Brown that they had from 2 years ago that could stretch that defense? It could be actually get scarier, couldn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, any additions they make too are only going to be icing on the cake. I mean, when you look at the supporting cast that he had and what he was able to do, I mean, I know he had Mark Andrews, I know he had a solid running game, and he ran himself, obviously. But that's just icing on the cake for that. Now, if they do go out and add some weapons, you might see that kind of cut into the running a little bit, which, like you said, as far as from an injury standpoint, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but it could possibly cut into those rushing touchdowns. So that might be something that might hurt a little bit, but that kind of feeds back into what I was saying about don't be surprised if there is a little bit of dip in that production.
Right. We got about 5 minutes to talk, which is what I was kind of hoping for. We kind of look at the rest of the quarterbacks. Now, one of the surprising things is that though he was nominated for an award, no awards went to Jameis Winston, even though he certainly could have been one of the winners of the clutch less with your high totals but low consistency. It's been talked that down your neck of the woods about Phillip Rivers moving to Florida, the fact that he could end up in Tampa Bay. What are your thoughts? I just don't see them doing anything with Winston, especially with an old guy like Phillip Rivers. I mean, I don't see that helping that team at all.
No, I don't think that makes you any better. And, despite the amount of interceptions he did have, if he could even cut that in, down to 20, which is still a pretty huge number, that would make them a much better football team. And I think with Bruce Arians too, I don't think necessarily Phillip Rivers makes you any better. I think he just kind of puts you back to where what you have right now, only with less arm strength. I don't think at this point Bruce Arians is going to bring in a totally new guy, because I don't think he has all that many years to see a young guy come in and try to rebuild the whole thing from the ground up. So right. I think it's kind of silly if they do anything crazy as far as go outside of Winston, because he's a guy there. He knows the offense, knows the guys around him. Just needs to cut down on the turnovers and decision making, and I don't know if that's really something that when you talk about whatever team it is you follow and you want to go get another quarterback. The only problem is, okay, fine, who are you going to replace him with? And I don't see too many replacements that are going to give you much more than he does already.
Right, I agree too, and if anything, maybe Rivers goes to Miami. If they already got an old guy in Fitzpatrick, I don't know why they need two old guys, so I don't know what they'll do there, but. Yeah, I think really could help Tampa and help Winston actually would be to get a real running back that can actually take some pressure off him and force him to not throw the ball as much, maybe not be forcing those bad decisions because they're playing from far behind, and get a decent running back. There's been talk about David Johnson going there because he played with Arians, and I think that would make a lot of sense at this point, because one, I don't think Cardinals, I don't know if they'd be able to cut some of that salary, but they could, get out of not having to get a big contract with him. They've got Chase Edmonds, who wasn't bad as well, but it seems like they have a love fest for Kenyon Drake, as they should, because he was very good. We'll have to wait and see, what's going to happen. The draft, there's some pretty decent running backs coming out. Tampa Bay obviously has, pretty high pick, so we'll have to wait and see there. So, all right, so we got about 3 minutes left, Ron, so let's go back to baseball. Let's talk about your baseball, what you're doing right now with the boys from Nasty Cast and Fantrax.
So we are continuing on with on the Dynasty show. We're continuing on with our minor league previews. We just did Texas Rangers farm system last week, and we did, we went, I think, 10 deep, and then we went 5 more for our Patreon people that subscribe, so they got a little bit extra on the Rangers farm system, somewhat deep. Farm system, a couple of guys at the top that are it's a little top heavy, but we did that, and then we did our shortstop preview. This coming week, I'm not sure which system we're gonna go over. We're getting to the point where we're kind of getting through them all, and then this week's going to be part 1 of our outfield preview. So we'll have that for you Wednesday with the Nasty Cast with the outfield preview, and then Thursday with the Dynasty Pod.
Nice. So when I was out at Fantasy Camp 2 weeks ago, they did have all of their rookies, mostly guys that they had just drafted. So have you guys had your talk about the Indians farm system yet? And what are your thoughts on the young kid, it's not Espinoza. Espino, thank you.
Daniel Espino is the guy. It's been a while since we've talked about them. I know, kind of caught me off guard here. I got to look here.
Sorry.
we got a couple guys. They've got Tristan McKenzie, pitching prospect.
Right.
They've got a few guys that are pitching prospects that are pretty solid. They've got a kid at third base, Nolan Jones, that's going to be does it with the bat, does it with the glove. I think he's going to be a solid guy for them.
Okay.
We've got a couple of guys that are at the lower levels that are pretty impressive, but yeah, definitely a guy that we talked about. I think Cross is pretty high on Daniel Espino. I think you got to see him play a couple times and actually got to see him firsthand.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, he was there. We just saw him walking, but we saw some of the guys out there throwing, and they were hitting in cages and that. We didn't really see him hit. They was kind of in a closed place. But, man, I was listening to those guys throw, and, man, that ball just smacks in their glove like, yeah, they're throwing a lot harder than us 50-year-olds out here, that's for sure.
Yeah, another kid I want to mention with them, too, that we talked about that we all love, and it's far down, a kid named George Valera. George Valera is an outfielder that you want to keep your eye on as well. He's going to be a solid player.
Yeah, well, so far they still have Lindor, and that's, I've said I was really hoping they'd keep him, so that's good. So, all right, well, hey, thanks again, Ron, it's good to be back, and we got about 20 seconds left, so I'll just kind of remind everybody, check out BigGuyFantasySports.com, check out the new baseball consistency information analysis, all the great stuff. Of course, you can always follow me on Twitter at Bob_Lung. We will be back here every week now for quite a while. Everybody have a great week. Take care. God bless. Talk to you soon.
How to show up with Coca-Cola Energy. You're tired and you're thinking of canceling on your friends. Don't do it! Every time you cancel on a friend, a unicorn loses its horn and becomes a regular horse. Do you really want that on your conscience? Instead, grab an ice-cold can of Coca-Cola Energy with delicious Coke taste and reinvigorating energy. Keep the unicorns alive! Show up every day with Coca-Cola Energy. Energy you want, taste you love.
Hey, I'm Andy, and I started Harry's, the shaving company that's fixing shaving. Here's why some of our customers choose Harry's.
The blades are about $2 each.
I get a nice, clean shave every time.
The blades stay sharp for plenty of shaves.
Thanks, guys. And for everyone else, give us a try with this special offer. Get a Harry starter set with a 5-blade razor, weighted handle, shave gel, and a travel cover. All for just $3 plus free shipping. Just go to harrys.com and enter EASY at checkout. That's harrys.com, code EASY.